John Brzenk versus Irakli Zirakashwili is set for 21st of January. The event is East versus West 6. Engin Terzi is organizing it in Istanbul, Turkey. This is going to be an amazing event and amazing match. An important match for both of the athletes. Who has more probability of winning? Paul Lynn is going to give us his unbiased insight. He will not consider himself a North American here. Okay, I'm getting my own feedback.
It sounds
Just
good
wait.
on mine.
Just wait. So, what are your thoughts about this match, Paul?
I mean, I've learned my lesson on questioning John, and that's as unbiased as I can be because I was worried coming into the Oleg Petrenko match. I think a lot of people were questioning like, where's Oleg going to be? And I saw him, and he's in great form, and the numbers he was saying. A lot of people, Angin included, were questioning how that match was going to go. I was one of them, and John never ceases to amaze. I don't. When I look at the match from an objective perspective, Irakli does possess that outside, posting top roll, strong hand, back pressure, pronation driven, clean, pure top roll that has shown to be an issue for John early on in his comeback against Dmitry Ketchin. Obviously, he's progressed a long way since then. And then we saw the loss to Angerbayev. Um, but I just am not sure that Irakli has the exact style to be able to emulate with what Kittergali Angerbayev did. So I think Irakli is definitely going to be at that level very, very shortly based on his trajectory and his age and the amazing things he's doing. I just don't think 19 days from now or whatever it is going to be the time.
So, you mentioned the style of Ongarbayev and Irakli Zirakashvili. Ongarbayev is more of a pure clean top roller. Irakli likes to go back first. And the stylistic thing that we were talking about, we have seen how Irakli lost to Todd Hutchings. After that, Engin Terzi has mentioned quite a few times that Irakli pulled Engin Terzi to the side table and asked him that what is it that he's not doing properly? Why did he lose that match? And Engin told him to add some cupping before going sideways, so that he can isolate Todd on his bicep. Otherwise, if he's pulling back, his arm is going sideways, and there is no way he can do anything from that position. So my question is, if Irakli ends up in a similar situation where he has that back pressure but he does not have that cupping, and John Brzenk is pushing sideways, can John do what Todd Hutchings did to Irakli without his wrist?
So John and Todd are much different pullers. I will say that everyone sees Todd Hutchings as a side pressure puller because he chooses to not focus so much on hand. Although his hand is incredibly strong, he would rather focus on arm and side pressure. But I think what people neglect to pay attention to is the fact that he has immense pronation. So when his wrist goes back and he engages the strap, his pronator stays intact, which allows him the lane to be able to go sideways. Without that pronation, if he's turned palm up, it makes it much harder for him to go high side. So that advice given from Angin is super sound. Defeat the pronation, shut down the access to the side pressure. Sound advice. Um, I think the difference between Todd and John is number one, John has a much stronger hand as a whole, and John has probably, arguably, the world's best pronation, even when his wrist goes back, as we've seen evidenced against people like Chance Shaw early on. When his hand was gone, he keeps that pronator and fights through it. We saw a similar early portion of the match against Pablo Derbanyev, where Pablo went sideways. John lost his wrist a little bit, gained it back. He did it with me. I just think that, he did it with Oleg at points. He's so good in that lane, and he's so good at getting it and enacting it on the losing side. So I think we do see a situation where if Irakli has improve that wrist flexion, is it going to be enough to defeat John's pronation? From what I felt from John, I just never felt that level of consistent hydraulic pronation. So that's whether you're in his hook on his arm, or if you're outside, the pronation's still there. So I mean, could Irakli have made those gains between the Todd Hutchings match and now? Yeah, possibly. But again, I've learned not to bet against the old dog.
Mhm. Let me address the chat real quick. Cop blocker or Coop blocker, how do you pronounce it? Ken Elchi, Irakli for the win, Georgian power. Hello, brother. Jesus M in the house. Welcome. Clerks 93, yo. Emir Sekipovich is saying, hi guys, do you maybe have any info on how John is doing training wise? We didn't hear from him in a while. I don't know. I think I'll interview John for sure once before this event ends. A small interview. Like last time when I invited John Paul, I didn't tell him that the format for the interview is going to be 30
Yeah.
questions with John Brzenk, and he got scared when I announced it while recording. He got scared. So I tried to cut the conversation short, but it was like still couple of hours of conversation. I cannot settle for less than that. It was my first opportunity ever talking with the goat.
Yeah, you had to take that shot. And you cut the interview up really well, like with the milestones throughout the talk, so you can
Yeah.
skip through what topic and what question you want to get to, which is what I did.
Yeah, the format works, Paul. I've seen this, like these interviews. If you really prepare your questions, if you give the timestamps and everything, people are going to watch it. The interview has 34 or 35,000 views, which is amazing, amazing. Arm wrestling is really progressing forward. So Benji Mac, Yo Pradeep, and Paul, thanks brother for joining the chat. Clerk 93, you think Brzenk will try to win without strap, or it will go to the strap no matter what? No, there is absolutely no way, at least in the first couple of rounds, that John Brzenk can or Irakli can beat John without the straps. This is 100% going to the straps. What do you think, Paul?
No, yeah, I don't think Irakli is seeing a lane where he can pin John without the strap. I think Irakli's going to be, all that back pressure. It's going to wind up in a slip for sure.
Yeah.
Not unless unless John wants to try his luck hooking him, but I don't see that as
No.
John's primary game plan for sure. I think we see straps every match.
Yeah. And how do you hook a guy without the straps who hammer curls more weight than Levan Second actually? I think it is impossible for anyone to hook him without the straps. Really difficult at least. It can be done in the straps, but does John have the ability? This was one of my questions, Paul. Does John have the ability to hook Irakli Zirakashvili? Like Sasha Andreev did it when Irakli was 90 kilos, but it was like pure joint based hook. Like he
Yeah.
was moving forward, then going sideways, hitting without the wrist, then slowly he gained some cup. I don't think anyone can just wrist curl Irakli in a hook. You have to shoot forward, you have to involve a lot of joint movement in trying to do that.
Yeah, I don't think like with John's shoulder issues, I don't see that being his first go to. Now we've seen John transition amazingly. I mean, we watched him do it with Andrabaya, transition into a hook. I think it'll have to be mid match based on like if the match slows down and there's a window for that transition. I don't see John shooting his shoulder forward and taking that European total commitment to that cup supination at all costs. I don't see that being John's strategy, but you never know, because I mean the guy has every tool in the book, and who knows where the match is going to lead. So that's what's most interesting about John's matches, because he's so proficient everywhere. It's hard to predict where the match is going to go. And the other thing is, if John gets into the driver's seat, he will gladly put himself out there and try something else just to see if it works. So maybe we see it. Maybe I just don't see it happening early.
Mm-hmm. And Lagia has pinned the link to Paul Lynn's YouTube channel in the comment section. Guys, please subscribe. By the time this live stream is 2-3 days old, I'm sure it is going to get about a couple of thousand views. So at least 50 of you should subscribe to Paul Lynn's channel. That is the target. That's the target. So coming back to the previous point, Paul, Engin mentioned that you should add more cupping. I don't believe that this is some advice that Irakli was getting for the first time in his career. I can count the number of practices that I've been on my hands. that many practices, table practices I've had in my entire life. Still, there was one guy who was doing this flop press with me. I was beating him without the, like under normal situations, I was taking his hand, beating him. But as soon as he did the flop press on me, I had no option. I was like
Mhm.
in this overpronated position, and I asked him what
Mhm.
should I do from here, and he told me that you should add more cupping instead of more pronation. So I just do not believe that Irakli wasn't aware of this situation. So is it something that you can improve in like 3 4 months of 6 months time?
I mean, I do think wrist flexion and finger containment is a quick game.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I guess early on it's a quick game. Now, when you're at Irakli's level and you want to gain 2%, it might take a year. Who knows? Like, we always talk about this. At the higher levels, you can see a match go 3-0 one way, and it can look like people are on two different planets. But in reality, it could be a 2% difference in one angle that really separates the match and makes it look one sided. So maybe it is 2%. Maybe that's all he needed. Is there enough time? I don't know. And again, it comes down to your opponent, too. I think that advice was primarily most specifically for the previous match that Irakli had, where Engen was referring to Todd Hutchings, which I think is very sound advice for that specific match, a
Mm-hmm.
match where the guy is not even trying to contain.
Yeah.
He is just locking the strap in and going sideways. How do you beat that guy? Yeah, probably defeat his pronator. Now, is that the key to Irakli leveling up against everyone? Probably not. Is it a variable in this match? I think so. But I just think that John's pronation is it's so serious and such at a high level that the percentage gains would need to be more than 2%. So who knows? I guess we're going to find out. But I do. At the end of the day, I do have John as a strong favorite in this. Now, I know the question was asked about his training. I haven't had any specific insight, but those of us, I mean, if you know John or if you looked at any of his podcasts and everything, you know that he's not a super gym guy. He did delve into more like handles and training apparatus he uses off a pulley system, which I think has been part of his comeback. He doesn't publicize all this. He's basically a one practice a week guy. But when you're at John's level and his genetic gift level and then his table IQ level, we've seen him just leaps and bounds through his comeback. So I gotta believe that John is training at the same, capacity and frequency as he has been. So his trajectory should continue on the same angle that it's been.
Yeah. And SG Records, Roman is in the house. Hey Pradeep, hey Paul. Hope you are doing great, brothers. Yep, for sure. And GB19 saying, do you think John is overlooking Irakli as Levan said? Are you aware what Levan Signashvili said about John?
I did not watch the video. Didn't LeVon tell him, like, I saw the headline
Stay
said,
home.
like, don't go home, said stay home.
Yeah, yeah. He was basically not so happy because John, according to him, he's always talking about the Denis Siplankov match and he's kind of overlooking Irakli Zirakashvili. There is a good 5 weeks difference between those matches, but do you think he's overlooking Irakli? Does John believe that it is an easy match for him?
I think I don't want to say what John thinks, but I think John, I think, knows that it's a favorable matchup. Does that mean that John's overlooking him? I don't think so. I think John's been notorious for looking at matches as a training session and a workout. He said it multiple times, in the past. This is going to be a good workout. Hopefully, I get enough from this match to help push me to my next. So I don't think he's overlooking Irakli. I think there is a chance that maybe he's looking at it as, a stepping stone match to help level him up to the next one, which is, I think, fair, in that he's a guy that's booking multiple matches and he has them layered. And I've found that to be very tricky, to have the layered matches and have, not quite have the ability to focus 100% on one because there's another one lingering in the back. And to be honest, I mean, if you got Denis Siplankov waiting in the wings, there's no way that you're not thinking about that. So I would venture to guess from knowing John and the way he thinks that he's probably looking at this as another step in that ladder to where he wants to go. Now, is he overlooking him? I can't imagine that. But I think he's probably aware that it's a favorable matchup for him.
Mm-hmm. Clerks 93 is saying that Brzenk is looking it as training for Siplenkov. I think the overlooking part mostly comes from the social media hype. Like which match is John talking about more? I'm not sure if this, what we are seeing on the internet, what John is talking about more on the internet, has any relation with how he is actually training on the table. Just because he talks about Denis Siplenkov 5 times and Irakli a couple of times, it doesn't mean he's training for Denis Siplenkov. It could just be the fact that he's more excited about that match.
Right. I mean, that match has history. You know, that match has legacy and stuff written all over it. I mean, we wouldn't be human if we weren't, you know, aware of that as competitors. If that's waiting in the wings, it's going to be in your subconscious. Not to mention, even though it's the later match, it is already starting to garner more hype. Now,
Yeah.
That being said, it puts John in like one of those, like we would call it a trap game in football, where you have like the playoffs waiting or whatever. You know you're already in. And then you have that week 10 game against a lesser opponent where it's hard to not focus on the next week. So it's a trap game situation for sure. But John's been in the game for 40 years, you know. I'm sure he's been in this situation multitude of times. So if anybody can handle it, John.
Mm-hmm. And Chan Shaw is in the house. Hello, guys. Hello, Chance.
What up?
And what is your score prediction, guys? GB19 is asking. I want to add one thing. I think. Do you think that there is a possibility of Irakli getting hooked if he tries to go like not go backwards and go more sideways with the cup? Because in the Krasimir match there was no hooking there, but there was one moment when Irakli was beating Krasimir with kind of a high hook that Irakli's that Krasimir's wrist was like this. Krasimir lost, but he was not top rolled. Maybe he had slight cup as well in that position, but Irakli's high hook, his side pressure was way too much that he took Krasi down. Is there a possibility that Irakli can get kind of this defensive hook by John Brzenk? Is that possible?
I don't. I mean, again, that would take total control of the pronation, right? So that means the focus is on the cup more than the back pressure and pronation into the fingers. It's more cup. You know what I mean? Like hard, high cupping. I don't know if Irakli has the cupping strength to be able to totally defeat John's pronator. We see Chance Shaw in the chat. We see him do that quite often. We saw him do that to Zurab. Zurab lost his wrist at a point, but when Zurab came forward, you know, we see Chance just boom, cup, total control from there. That takes number one, it's easier to accomplish when your opponent is coming shoulder forward at you and trying to supinate. So I don't think that we're going to see John in a situation where he's giving his pronator up trying to get supination. So I think John would need to aid Irakli in that process and give his pronator up for it to happen. I don't think we'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lagia is saying that opponent, this is the greatest match of my life. John, I hope it is going to be a good workout for me.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Lazy man. Do you have any insight if you are aware of the reason or the cause for the question that I'm just about to ask you? You have the option to either tell us here or not, but you have to tell if you know this or not. Why did Ongarbayev cancel the match with Irakli? Just first of all, just tell us, do you know the reason or not?
I do not know 100%.
So okay, and whatever you know, would you like to tell us or not?
I don't know. I can't say it because I don't know if it's true. But I have speculation based off of things I've heard.
Okay, if that is your own imagination, then you can just tell us here. If this is some secret inside info, then maybe you need to keep it a secret.
It's not secret, but I don't want to go saying stuff that isn't true based off my speculation and how I interpreted things that were said to me. So I don't know. I do not know for sure.
Mm-hmm. SG Records is saying, if you ask me what are the chances to see Chance in 30 viewers, I would say it is higher than Ryan's chance of beating Chance. Yeah, Chanshaw is also having a match against Ryan on, I think it is 19th of February, if I'm correct. or 9th of February, something like that. I'll have Chan Shaw as well on the show for sure. We scheduled it for Friday, and I forgot. I forgot. I checked
Oh
it on
no,
Sunday, like I was
Mr.
supposed to.
Professional. Come on. It's like, come on.
Do you think Irakli will be much better than versus Todd Hutchings? How much has he improved? I think it will be like almost 9 months or 6 months.
I
When was
mean,
East versus West 3, Paul?
he could have got a lot better. I mean, based off of his age. But again, different opponents. So we see Todd win in fairly dominant fashion. Um, in fact, Chance gave Todd a much tougher match, threatened him much more. I don't think that Irakli had enough time in 9 months to level up to the point where he's threatening a John that is climbing still. If John came in maybe John gets COVID or something, or some weird variable that happens. But if all things remain the same and trajectories stay the same, I don't think it was. But we'll see. And I did like you say about scores. I think Irakli could steal around. I do. We there's situations we saw Zarat do it, and it's weird because that isn't the style that you would expect to give John that level of a hassle that day. You know what I mean? So anything can happen for sure.
And earlier, Roman from SG Records was saying that, let me read. I got one table practice in my history, but I'm still gonna beat you, Pradeep.
Uh-oh.
You do not know who is training me. If you knew, you wouldn't be making this statement, Roman.
Is this happening? Is this happening East versus West 6? We doing this? We put it on
if
the
if
camera.
if I'm able to go there,
Yeah.
and there is a slight possibility, then I'm willing to dad move Roman in the first round. Both,
You go dad movie.
yeah, both left and right.
Pretty. If I'm training you, we're not talking trash like that. It's not part of our game.
Yeah, I my opponents, if I ever have a friendly, like a kind of this undercard super match with with anyone YouTuber super match, my opponent better wish like the big time trash talk is coming. Like you Paul, you wouldn't expect the amount of trash talk to a point where I may genuinely start hating my opponents. Like there would be no fun going on around. Like the
Oh,
trash
yeah.
talk would be like really real high level if
Really?
I'm going in a match.
Are you serious?
Yeah, for sure.
What are
I
you talking about?
sometimes I've
I'm just trying to figure out how you could be that insulting. I
You do
never
not
seen
know me,
it.
Paul. I tried not to be insulting, and people still feel insulted when I talk with people. What happens if I try? What happens if I try? Can you let me ask you a question? I'm getting a call, and maybe you can answer that. Paul is training you. Roman is asking. So can you tell Roman a little bit like how's the training going on?
Roman, this is how it works. I say, Pradeep, here's a basic 4 day a week split, and I tell him to do it, and that's about it. And then he asks me, "Am I doing this exercise right?" And then I tell him no or yes, and then I always say, "Just go heavy." That's the long and the short of it, really. There's no diet or nutrition or anything else involved in it. It's just me saying, "Go heavier."
Yeah. And this is why I'm going to kill you. I sometimes wonder. Sometimes I wonder, Paul. Let us start with the trash talking first. Roman, how does it feel to be the weakest guy in the East versus West building? How does it feel, man? I'm not sure if I've ever been in a room where I'm the weakest by far, and SG Records Roman is that person. Have you seen anyone, Paul, who is weaker than Roman?
Why are you dragging me into this? I'm just trying to figure out who would be insulted by this.
I'm just kidding. So, but sometimes I really do wonder, like if I were in your position, like if I was an athlete of your caliber or like someone similar to your level, and if I'm on this card or any card like this, my whole objective would be to make everyone talking about my match.
Yeah.
Like forget about the Devon match and like the John Brzenk match, famous matches like that. My match, if I were at your level, my match would be probably the third most talked about match on the entire card.
Okay. So, but what happens? What happens if you and Roman have this match, right? And you are just laying him out and you're memeing him, you're doing all kinds of stuff, and everybody's talking about it so hype, and then he 3-0s you and he like does a little bond, like does that to you. It's like, what do you do after that? Like, what's the response video after? As well, you just go dark. What do we do?
No, first of all, this is not going to be. I hope it is not going to be a live stream. And the first thing that happens is that all cameras, all mobile phones are seized, immediately seized. After that, you're not allowed to upload that. This is the first thing that is going to happen.
Oh, those matches happen, man. That stuff happens. There's been a bunch of them, high level dudes that did secret matches.
Pride and Prejudice is saying Zaur Pezolav interview. Yeah, that had to be postponed for some reason, brother. I'm going to do an interview with Zaur for sure. So a few more things that I wanted to discuss about this match, Paul, before we sign off. Is Irakli an established elite puller at this weight cap at 105, in your opinion?
Yes, yes, and I think he will eventually go down as one of the greatest at that weight category if he
Be-
doesn't push his body too far.
In a recent live stream, Hermes Gasparini mentioned that according to him, Irakli may be top 10 in the world. I don't think that is true, but he did say that. If we talk about the wins, Marcio Barboza, Lachlan Adair, and Krasimir Kostadinov, does these wins really mean that you're like top 5 in the world?
Not top five, but I think Marcio, and I know there was some injury there that happened during the match or whatever the case may be, but Neil always calls Marcio like the gatekeeper to the top. And that could sound insulting in a way, but I think really is the fact that Marcio has been at that top level for such a long time, and he hovers at an intermediate weight where he can beat the big guys and he can compete at the lower level at a really high level, at the lower weights. So to me, the most impressive one there is for sure Marcio. So I mean, I don't know if that's not enough data necessarily to put him in the top 10, but I wouldn't necessarily agree he's in top 10 like no weight cap right now, but I think he is well on his way to establishing himself as like a Hall of Fame. Like he's got so much ahead of him, and he really does remind me of Hermes in so many ways. The way he pulls and the potential for weight gain if he so chose to go that route. Um, Again, I feel like he's a guy that probably should stay around 105, between 105 and 115, and not go crazy. And I think he could be like the greatest over time for sure.
Because my questioning was, yes, he beat all of them, and SG Records is mentioning that he beat Daniel Mosier 5-1 as well. Again, not something according to me that proves that you would be
Much
at
lighter
that.
weight.
Yeah, 90
What
kg weight,
was that? 87 kilos or something like that, or 185? It was still
90
low.
kilos. I think it
Was it
95.
90?
I think it was 95 kilos, maybe. I'm not sure.
SG Records. Can you confirm that? Because that was what was that, Zlatitur
No,
or the
it wasn't. I think it was the same event where Chafee versus Levan happened. I'm
Okay.
guessing it was the same event. I think
Okay.
Chafee
Maybe
versus
it was
Levan.
90.
Yeah,
Maybe it was
but
90.
but still, yes, it was impressive how he beat Marcio and Krasimir. But still, Matt Mask also beat Krasimir in a similar fashion, even more
Right.
dominantly probably. But
Right.
does that make Matt top 3 in the world or top 5 in the world in his weight cap, 105 kilos? That these are my questions, and a weakness always remains your weakness, because even in that Dan Mosier match, when Irakli was going sideways near the pin pad, his wrist was going back. If it goes back slightly against John, I'm not sure if there are many people who can beat John without a wrist.
I don't think we should go back as far as that Mojo match. I think he's different now. It actually amazes me, like seeing Irakli's level now that he even that he lost the match to Dan. Not because Dan isn't great. Dan is
Fouls, it
great.
wasn't fouls, yeah.
Yeah, like stylistically, I would favor Irakli's style at an equal strength level. Like whoever the opponents are, Dan style, Irakli style, equal strength level. I favor that style every day.
Mm.
So it surprises me even that he gave a round there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. I mean, it again comes down to like what form are people in, because we've seen Krasny. Um, People would argue that Krasny's on like a cold streak right now, but he's pulled some really, really good dudes too, like a lot in a row, and a
Yeah.
lot that were a lot bigger than him. That's why, to me, the best data is the Marcio match, because we saw Marcio in East versus West 3 look like a savage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Both arms. And we
Mm.
know where Marcio is. To me, that's the best data. He's probably the most consistent. In comparison to Matt Mask and everybody else we just talked about, because Matt has shown some inconsistencies too.
And the final question before we wrap this up would be, where exactly is John Brzenk right now? I was thinking about this yesterday and I was like, what happens if John wins this match? And what happens if John loses this match? I still believe that we are at least a couple of more matches after this one away from really knowing where exactly John Brzenk is at right now, because since his comeback John has lost only two matches, one against Devonlet which was one-sided and one against Kidargali Ongarbayev which was extremely close, at least the first couple of rounds and first three rounds. First round was dominant by John, but it was a really close match. So we don't really know. Even if John beats Irakli, does that mean that he can make a comeback and beat Ongarbayev as well? Is there anyone else? Can Michael Todd beat John at 105 kilos? So I think we are still at least two more matches away from really knowing where John's position is at in the world right now at 105 kilos. Is he top three in the world? For sure, he's top five, but is he top three? Is he number two, number one? What are your thoughts about it?
I mean, who do you have top five right now? Or who do you have top three? Like, well, who we got Kidargali at one. Who's two?
Michael is not there yet, but sometimes I have a reason to believe that everyone keeps on mentioning that Michael's hand is small. Michael is not really a super heavyweight. He's dominant because of his move, but I think he can be really dominant at 105 kilos.
We talked about it, you know what I mean? And like, we talked about it a couple like prediction videos and stuff. And again, it comes back to, we need this match to have an idea. Right now, it is a no one knows game. And, Michael, speaking to him, he's in great form. He feels great. Doesn't feel like he lost strength in comparison to the weight he's losing. Like, all those things are great. But until we see how that goes on the table, we don't know. And again, Michael, he and I are going to be in the sauna probably together, losing the last, how is that going to go? Is he really going to stay at 105 at that 231? We need this match. We need this data to know. Right now, it's hard to, I mean, technically coming down from that weight and being like number like top five in the world at supers, you would assume that the weight cut would happen and plug them right in there, but until we see, how do you know? And I feel like those are matches that has to happen. They have to happen. So we'll see Irakli here. Then we'll see John versus Dennis. And I think we'll probably have a strong after the Dennis match. If John can pull that off, I mean, that's got to be a little bit of a boost for John at his own weight. But we still have to see John and Michael, which was previously booked at Monster Factory. But because of some other competing things that were going on, we didn't get to see that. But I think that's possibly a good thing, because I think we could potentially see that match at East versus West now with King of the Pit, which I would like to see that. But I think we'll have to see those things. And then the question really remains, if how do like both of these matches happen, John and Irakli, and then Michael and Kidargali, then what's the next match?
Imagining these things, they just like, I feel frustrated to even think about those things, that Michael Todd Hutchings, John Brzenk, these three have never had a super match. Like both Todd Hutchings and Michael Todd just had a match, but John versus Todd, and John versus Michael never happened, and all of them live in the same country. What have been the promoters doing for last 2-3 decades? I don't know.
John and Todd are not going to pull. They have already stated like that
Yeah.
they will pull stateside. Why do we need to go to Turkey
Yeah,
to go
that
to
match
like?
is already set now in August, I think.
Yeah. So it took that long to get that there. But again, when you start looking at the big picture, it's interesting because we have watched every one of these people that we're talking about right now pull out of their weight class, right? So if we're talking 105, we're talking about a Michael Todd who's coming down from 285 or whatever he was when he was at his biggest. He's coming down. If he has success at 105 and somebody offers him a match with, I don't know, anyone at the high level, let's say it's Kurdachev, what is he going to do? Is he going to say no? Is it Kurdachev king of the table? Do we see Michael Todd shoot back up to 270 because he's being baited for that higher profile match? Same thing can happen to John at any given time. And we saw Angarbayev pull top 8. Like if Angarbayev's in top form, he can pull out of his weight class too. And oh, by the way, Todd Hutchings is really not even a walk around 105 guy. So he's even smaller than all of them. So, I mean, what does Todd Hutchings want to do? It was WAL that kind of forced his hand into saying you're going to pull the big guys, and he's never looked back. But is Todd going to one day say, hey, you know what? I want a 95. I want to wear the helmet and the shield at 95. If he does that, what's going to happen? There's so many variables that could stop us from ever having that clear 105 top 5. And that's the interesting part of all of these lighter weight classes, because you got so many guys that fluctuate. So many that'll cut down and others that'll gain to try and get a higher profile match. So I just hope we can see it. I'd like to see Michael stay low. I just don't know if 105 is the best fit. I feel like 115 is, the Prudnik, Devin rematch, like the 115 range is probably more enticing for Michael, but we'll have to see. Now, if he goes and takes that helmet and shield, then he got to stay there. So
yeah,
we need him to win.
all 3 shields will be with North American 105, 115, and super heavyweight. Jung only with a $2.79 super chat. Thanks, brother. King Pradeep is saying thank you very much. And I would like to correct myself. I said what were the promoters doing for almost 20 years. About Michael, I would say before 2010, Michael wasn't really strong enough to have a super match with John Brzenk. And same thing can be said for Todd Hutchings as well. So maybe it is only in last 12 years where they could have had a super match with John.
What year was it when Todd and John had that knockdown drag out?
2007, my guess is. I think 7 or 8, something like that. 2007.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
That was proud of it.
And Chansha was saying, I cannot name 10 pullers who are above Irakli at 105 kilos. I think when I was mentioning about Hermes Gasparini, Hermes said overall. He was not talking about 105 kilos. He said overall, Irakli can be top 10. This is why I said I don't agree with it.
Irakli's 100% top 10 at 105.
Yeah, for sure. That's for sure.
Now, I don't know the world as well as a lot of other people do, but I would venture to guess that he's probably much higher than that. Probably right in the middle at 105 of 10 and 1.
So I think that's about it, guys. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Paul Lynch's YouTube channel. We need to get more subs on Paul's channel, and check out the sponsors Old School Labs of the channel from the link in the description. And East versus West 6 is on 21st of January. Link to the pay-per-view is also in the description. Any final words for the viewers, Paul? 50 plus watching now.
No. Hey, thanks for listening to us. We appreciate you, Pradeep. Thanks for getting me on tonight, and get your ass back in the gym.
Thanks.